Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is waves, particularly related to emotion and the ebbs and flows and tides of emotion as they sort of overtake us at different times. So good morning, Rosalind. Great to be here with you this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. And before we get started with waves, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub those hands together to feel the tickling and the tingling and all that energy moving in your fingers, in your hands, and allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a new week, and we get to talk about waves. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed that emotions seem to come in waves, where you get sort of washed over with an emotional sensation. And when we allow ourselves to be present to those feelings, when we allow ourselves to feel those feelings, they shift. They shift and they move, sort of like the tides going in and out. And when we don't allow ourselves to experience those emotions, what happens is they tend to persist and deepen and nag at us and haunt us on bunches of different levels. So what we're talking about today is allowing yourself to be present to the feelings. And so I told you guys on Friday, I think, that my mom's 92nd birthday is actually coming up tomorrow. And we had family celebration over the weekend, and there were all kinds of emotions that were washing over me, and different levels of realization that it may be, which is not a new realization, it may be the last birthday we get to celebrate together. And it just hit me on a very, very different level, where there was a complex of emotions of imagining it from her vantage point, and also being present to how special this celebration may be, in a greater context. And I allowed myself to be very present to those feelings. Yes, right, Rosalind? Thank you. So happiest birthday, 92. Yeah, it's crazy, right? That's amazing. And I know that for her also, on some level, she's thinking about whether or not she's going to have another birthday. And I don't know that I know how to imagine being in that space of, any birthday could be our last, right? But I don't know that I can imagine being in that space of of believing that it's very likely, that this would be a last birthday. And the likelihood grows, right, with each year, potentially. Anyway, Rosalind says the experience of emotions seem they take hold more deeply when it's associated with pain in the body. The pain gives a sense of wanting to get rid of. Well, I think the emotional pain too gives a sense of wanting to get rid of. So, the things that I noticed is that I had a constriction in my throat. I had kind of an itching in my nose, a hollowness in my gut, like all these different sensations. And when we allow ourselves to be present to the sensations of the emotion, they dissipate. They truly do dissipate. It's kind of magic how that happens. It's pretty wild, how when we allow ourselves to experience our experience, it moves, that it shifts and changes. And when we resist those feelings, then they tend to kind of dig in their heels and become more persistent and insistent as well. And it was really interesting, just to recognize these feelings of sorrow that rose and fell around loss or anticipatory loss. So this was really, really interesting. I was talking with a client who has experienced a deep loss and has been doing a lot of reading around grief. And they mentioned this one book that was written about grief and loss and talked about this concept of anticipatory grief, where we anticipate the loss of someone. So I remember as I guess I was in my 20s. I think I was in my 20s. I'm not sure if it was my 20s or my 30s. I have no concept of time. Anyway, where I was anticipating the loss of my grandmother, who I loved dearly, and just feeling this tremendous grief over their loss. And they hadn't died yet, but I just remember projecting forward the void that would be left by her passing. And it's interesting, when we are caregiving for a loved one during that whole time, there is a sense, if we're present, there's a sense of grieving for the loss that is going to be happening or that is happening as they're dying. And in some ways, that process, that presence to that process allows us to experience some of the healing or some of the reconciling, some of the ability to move through the grieving process even before that person dies, to be coming to terms with what's happening, because we are actively engaged in this process of dying. So that's an interesting phenomena that has its own gift with it, right? As we allow ourselves to be present to that kind of process, it can be a gift because we get to be more appreciative of that person while they're with us. We can be in denial about the process, but we can also really be present to it. And Rosalind says, are emotions like an onion? Those on the outside are milder end of the scale or masking the inner layers, cutting to the core, synonymous with the wall of emotions compared to a gentle ebb and flow to transmute inevitable change. So beautifully written, Rosalind. Interesting. We often talk about emotions like an onion or issues like an onion, where you just keep peeling layers. And one of my clients shared instead the image of an artichoke, which I thought was so brilliant, that you have the outer layers of the artichoke, and as you peel them, then you get all this other stuff that's all hairy and prickly, and all of that stuff, it gets more kind of intense and messy as you get closer and closer to the heart. And I thought that was such a wonderful analogy, talking about the hairy fuzz. Rosalind says, yeah, exactly, the hairy fuzz in the middle. And, all the spiky bits in the middle as you're getting closer and closer to the heart. I thought that was such a perfect analogy. So for me, it's more artichokes than onions these days, in terms of recognizing these different dimensions of dealing with emotions. Rosalind says artichokes are so fun to eat. I really enjoy them as well. Apparently they're quite healthy for you. So that's kind of fun too. And probably not if you dip them in butter though. Anyway, so waves, sometimes it feels like tidal waves, these emotions that we experience. And we get to look also at how we precipitate those emotions, how we amplify them oftentimes by the way we talk about them or the things that we talk about. This was also interesting. So I was talking with somebody yesterday about how certain people have a perpetual habit of being late and anticipating that these people were going to be late for an event, and so getting worked up into a lather about how it's so disrespectful to be late, and just getting all upset about this anticipated lateness, right? Which did actually come true to form, right? But predictably. So the thing that's so interesting about that is we can set the stage for ourselves through these emotions, and we can set the emotions by setting the stage, right? So if I've got a whole big thing about lateness and I'm anticipating somebody's going to be late, and I can get myself into a whole upset about the lateness that hasn't even happened yet, so that when it happens, I'm just like all bent out of shape. or I can say, okay, it's predictable that these people are going to be late, and that's just par for the course. It's predictable. We don't have to get all upset about it, because that's what's going to happen. Is it worth spending the time and energy to get upset about something that is pretty much an inevitability? It's so interesting how we choose to direct our energy. I mean, the conversation about this was like 5 minutes long, to say, oh, this lateness thing, it's so disrespectful, and all this other stuff, and getting worked up into a big upset. So, by the way, guys, if you are writing comments and I'm not responding, it's because I don't see the comments. It's not because I'm ignoring you. So if you want to join the conversation, please go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page, put your comments in there, and then I should see them and be able to respond to them. So that would be awesome to have you join us in the conversation. But we're talking about waves of emotion, the ebbs and flows, and how when we allow ourselves to surf or ride the waves, then these things move through. They heal. It's like surges of energy that move through our body and being and consciousness. And as we allow those surges of energy to move through, then it's a healthier state, because we're not trapping that energy in our bodies. When we suppress those feelings, when we don't allow ourselves to feel them, what we're doing is tamping down that energy. And when we tamp down that energy, it's ends up being stuck in our body. And if we do that enough, it creates all kinds of conditions. It creates conditions of dis-ease, muscular tension, aches, pains, other kinds of dis-ease. So, for instance, when we suppress anger long enough, what can happen? You can get ulcers, right? Or anxiety. You can get ulcers. You can have this congestion of energy that ends up physicalizing. And so learning how to allow the emotions to move through is a really important thing for our health and well-being, because that energy is powerful energy. To be angry and suppress that rage, you can imagine that the rage has this fire to it, right? What happens? Indigestion, ulcers, inflammation, all kinds of stuff, right? Indigestion, when we have situations that we just can't digest, and there are many of them that we get presented with in life, that there are situations that make no sense, that are completely unacceptable, that happen, and yet when it's not until we find a way to reconcile ourselves in some way, shape, or form, to clear ourselves, to clear the reactivity around those things, that we get to experience a greater sense of freedom, and also greater energetic flow of energy, because we are an energetic system, right? We have our physical manifestation, but ultimately, if we follow physics, ultimately it's all energy. It's all energy that's all materialized in different ways. And so when we're able to be present to the energetics, then we can create very different states and experiences. And we can actually create different physiological outcomes as well, which is pretty cool if you think about it. You know, that channeling energy through, that's something I'm doing lately, and we'll see how impactful it is ultimately, I guess. But I've been visualizing myself with this blue healing energy from like the divine blueprint, and having this energy just radiate through and outward from my body, and healing all the different areas of my body, energizing, clearing any blockages, just like this blue electricity, and just sort of seeing it with my arms outstretched and looking up and charging my whole body with this incredible blue energy, and allowing it to come to its healthiest expression. So that's my most recent experiment, playing with that. It's kind of fun. So Rosalind says, anticipated loss can be associated with regret, or not having the capacity to change the outcome can make it feel like there's no choice. Yeah. When somebody else is dying, you know, we don't get to change the outcome, right? It feels empowering when that reconciliation is a job that can be done with despite the external outcomes. I like using color visualization. Do you have a guided meditation you listen to? Well, let me go back to what you said with anticipated loss can be associated with regret or fear or powerlessness. You know, you said that not having the capacity to change the outcome and feeling like there's no choice. You know, when we're present to someone dying, the temptation is to want to deny it or remove yourself from it. But there is the choice to be even more present. I remember when my cat was dying, it was so hard to be with him. And I loved him so much. I wanted to be there with him. And I made a deliberate and conscious choice to be present with him. But it was really hard. It was really hard because I felt powerless to help him. And it was really, really sad and hard. Good morning, good evening, Gia. Good morning for us and good evening to you. Welcome, welcome. It's so good to have you here with us. We're talking about waves, particularly as they relate to emotions. And so Rosalind I was talking about this energy visualization that I do lately with this brilliant, brilliant blue energy to just emanate this blue electric energy from inside out throughout my body. And I do not do a guided meditation with it. I just am present to all these different places in my body where I can concentrate that energy and move it outward and upward, and, you know, just become this electrical field of this buzzing blue energy. It's kind of awesome. Yeah, and then I can feel myself amplifying it and expanding it. It's been a fun thing to do. And I do believe it's having positive physical impact on me as well. So that's a pretty powerful thing to be spending time and attention with. And you know, it's a meditation that I'm guiding. And I can almost hear the sizzle buzz of the electricity, that I'm channeling through. And the idea is that it's the divine blueprint energy. So that's probably why it's blue for me. Anyway, it's really, really fun. So waves of emotion, waves of energy, allow yourself to ride those, allow yourself to experience them. And then it's the ebbs and flows, they come and go. And we allow ourselves to allow life to flow through us, right? That's really what it's about, is to be as clear a channel for life to flow through in our unique vessels. At least that's what I think it's about, is to be the clearest vessel for your unique expression of life expressing itself. And so with that, I'm going to wrap it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, Enlightened World Living, EWN One with the Earth. And until next time, so much love and deep, deep, deep appreciation to you for engaging in these conversations and considerations, and being willing to look at things that sometimes are less than comfortable. And thank you, Gia. Gia says, good morning and good day ahead, Mira Rubin and everyone here. Thank you, Gia, and thank you all. It's always a pleasure and a privilege. And until next time, so much love to you.